Thanks for checking out this episode of Business Black Belts. I really appreciate you listening and hope you get some great insights out of today's leader. Let's dive into the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another podcast of Business Black Belts. I'm Dave Golding, and we're here with Ryan Pereus from Superhuman Prospecting. How you doing today, Ryan?
Good, David.
Thanks for joining us. Like we talked about in preparing for this, Ryan, just really want to get a sense of who you are and how you came to be the CEO of Superhuman Prospecting, as well as there's some other ventures I know you're a part of, like a soccer club and doing some writing and scripting for salespeople. So really want to dig into some of those things. But maybe an easy place to start is just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently the founder CEO of Superhuman Prospecting. We're based out of Norristown, Pennsylvania, which is just north of Philadelphia. And we have a team of about 50 that is based out of here. We have many of our team members remote across the United States and the world, but we provide outsourced cold calling, appointment setting, target market and target client profile building, and other kind of supplementary inside sales services. So we've been around for about, uh, I guess, going on 6 years now. Um, I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio. So I know Miles is from Wheaton. So I have
Yeah.
a little bit of connection there because I kind of went to the Midwest Christian rival school, Midwest and East rival school, Messiah College, out in
Wow.
here in Harrisburg. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in the Philadelphia area. I went to school there and fell in love with Philly after spending a semester. We had an exchange program in at Temple, and spent some time traveling and doing some things before kind of starting to think about how I wanted to start the business, and decided to land it here in Philly. So here we are.
Very, very exciting. So how now you look really young. Um, how did you first of all, I'm sure you some
Thank
kind
you,
of
but it's the filter. It's you
yeah,
know how the
right.
filters work now.
Right. But, when did you get the bug? Was this something as far as being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, was it something that, in high school or college you dreamt of doing? Or, how did you come to be the CEO of Superhuman Prospecting?
So I always had a knack for entrepreneurship, whether it was from, lawn mowing businesses, to kind of tinkering with eBay as early as like 16 years old, and figuring out how to, craft a message or description of what I was selling in such a way that someone would want to buy, like a 1950s used race car helmet or old audio receiver or something like that. And so there was always just kind of like, in college, people just say like, Ryan, what you up to? You've been wheeling and dealing these days? Like, what's been happening? Because I was always like at auctions or, selling the like toaster or anything.
Yeah.
And so there's always that knack. But I also grew up, someone asked me this earlier in a podcast, and I just kind of said it on the podcast, where I did grow up in a conservative Christian household, and that actually realized later had a pretty big impact on me because I was kind of taught to convert, it's a big word there, people
Mm,
into the Christian faith. And so a lot of my time was spent uh, kind of speaking with my Catholic friends, who is a little bit different there. And
yep.
so I would spend a lot of time handling objections, if you want to use sales language, but in the Christian terms means apologetics. So you're like
Right.
defending your faith. And
Yeah.
honestly, that was a really big part of a lot of the knack that came from uh, that ability to kind of respond in an instant to someone's objection as to why they wouldn't want to move forward with something. So
Yeah.
I think those were kind of some of the base development of skills that led to an outsourced prospecting business. You know, um, to kind of like fast forward, you know, the knack for entrepreneurship turned into kind of the professional career of business development, and that's how I started my career, was in business development as business development manager, managing 40 people right outside of college at age 23. I had no idea
Wow.
what that meant. 40 sales development reps, and was just doing it. And so found kind of that's where that skill set met the marketplace. And so that's kind of where the beginning of this idea spawned, was from my experience kind of in that role when I was right out of college. So eventually, a few years later, decided that, this is an area, prospecting, sales development, that, I was becoming proficient in, and thought that there was maybe a new or better way to do things in the 21st century than maybe how we were taught from cutthroat salespeople
Yep.
in the 80s and 90s, and were very much a part of leadership in the early 2000s. And so that's where the superhuman prospecting came from, human to human lead generation, and kind of building trust with your prospects. So there's a long-winded explanation there, but started with scripting and turned into folks being interested in calling services as well. And that's kind of how it began.
Yeah, I love how you talked about your faith. I have a very similar experience, but almost in the inverse. I was raised
Okay.
Catholic,
Okay.
um, and then
I didn't know that.
was
Yeah.
my wife is the one that was much more of a just a Bible-based Christian
Yeah.
when I met her, and so that really changed over the last 20 years. But what was interesting for me is, starting out in sales, I thought the conversion conversations would be a lot easier.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, that truly is the hardest, really a very difficult conversation to have, and again, it all depends. But I love that correlation. That really prepared you
Mm,
for, being in sales and handling objections, because it is something that, in this world, if you step out and talk about your faith, you're going to get, some
yeah.
objections for
Yeah.
sure. So
Yeah. Absolutely. So no,
very
I can
cool.
appreciate that.
Yeah, so you have grown the business to about 50 people.
Yeah.
Would love to understand, because it looks like you started, human to human first.
Yeah.
It looks like based on LinkedIn, that's been around longer.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the evolution
Hmm.
of starting out with human to human and then going to superhuman, and how you've handled the growth? Because 50 people is quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah. So it did start off with sales copy and crafting language that was a little bit different from how I think traditional kind of sales teaching had been developing. Now, I think there's always been great people in sales, right? There's always been this kind of stigma towards sales folks, and I think a lot of that came from kind of the used car sales mentality, but also from the Wall Street area in the 80s, where there was a lot of boiler rooms and kind of ways of going about things that weren't really transparent or truthful in sales, and really
Mhm.
gave sales a bad name. And I was kind of taught some of these methods growing up, or I guess when I was developing as a sales professional, that really just sat with me wrong. Do whatever you can, say whatever you can say to get the sale. It doesn't matter if it's truthful, because at the end of the day, did they find interest in the product or service? And if they buy it, then they did. So it doesn't matter what you said.
Yeah.
Lying to gatekeepers, or um, you know, kind of hooking people on false claims, or smudging numbers, things of that nature. And so there was a kind of constructed way that I think I was taught, that I said, if there was a little bit different spin, you could still get the short-term deals, which is all what it was about, right? One call closes and get the sale now,
Yeah.
versus getting preserving all those opportunities, but never losing trust with the potential customer, so you can still get the mid and long-term deals as well. Ultimately, you convert higher. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the base philosophy that's been with human to human since the very beginning. How do you push performance as high as possible now without ever losing trust with your potential customers, and that kind of crafted a way to speak to people. And so when I would write messaging or copy, people would say, why is this different? Like, why should I use this? And that was the philosophy behind it. So every word and phrase, would be a little bit uh, uh, shifted to fall within that framework. So that was kind of the passion that came from the philosophy, is to push this new idea of talking with people. But the market just needed ways to speak with people. The digital revolution was
Yeah.
happening, but it was also kind of human to human, or the person to person conversation was still in need, and there was kind of a bounce back of this person to person need in the marketplace. So there was this a lot of people who were interested, but they said, "Hey, I love this script. I love what you're doing, but at the end of the day, I don't have time to call. Would
Yeah.
you call this for me?" And that's how Superhuman began. Was really just the feedback from the customers that we had. I always really loved the idea of being like a big sales consultant, like Mike Weinberg or someone like that, or Jeb Blunt. I still do aspire to be, do some things that they've done. But I thought, I don't really have a ton of amazing career experience. I'm only in my mid to late 20s. If we're able to start providing outsourced cold calling, this would provide an endless laboratory for experimentation and proof for the marketplace to have unlimited data on all markets and how prospects respond to cold calling in those marketplaces. So that was my drive to start Superhuman. And I think it was about, 2015, I started the H2H consulting, but then around 2017, we started with three people in a little co-working space in Center City, Philly. It was like a Harry
Hmm.
Potter sized closet. And we even shared it with another company. So we were just packed in there, just making calls. And
Like a boiler
it was
room,
like
right?
it's like a modern day boiler room, right? History repeats
But with
itself.
integrity.
What's that?
With
With it,
integrity.
yeah, we got to call it something else. I don't
Right.
know what
Right.
something else, but yeah, that's basically what it was, and it just grew from there. That's where the market needed us. The message and philosophy was still kind of true and relevant. That H to H method, but it was kind of growing into a different into a different path, which was the outsourced cold calling and appointment setting. And that's
Yeah.
where it really started to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting too, being in this business. And thinking about, I came over to Veth Group from a career in IT sales,
Oh
and
wow.
um, so I've done a lot of prospecting, and found that, like you talked about early on, for whatever reason, it probably was my upbringing, that just honesty
Yeah.
worked, right? That
Yeah.
I started working in the sales field, and saw guys were encouraging me to not be honest, or to cut these corners, and for whatever reason I just didn't, and found that pretty quickly I was outperforming them, and
Wow.
I think there is something, there really is something about that. I mean, it's just, and you and I being believers, there are just principles that are undeniable, right? And through honesty, through hard work, through giving without a desire to
Hmm.
get, those things are really, really powerful. um, can you talk about and I bring that up because I think it's in the difficult moments where it becomes easy to potentially shortchange those principles, right? Or question those principles. You know, in your evolution of this business, can you just talk about some of those challenges, and any time when you were thinking like, man, you know, maybe this isn't going to work, right? And kind of how you overcame that.
Yeah. Are you talking more of from the business growth itself, or maybe like some specific deals that we could have been tempted by, or, or yeah, I guess maybe to
Yeah,
clarify.
either one,
Okay.
right? Yeah. I mean, I think whatever, whatever comes to mind, right? When I talk about those challenges and just being, like I'll give you an example. When, I worked for a company called Solutionary, and we got acquired by a huge
Yeah.
company called NTT, which was based out of Japan. And that just changed everything. Now, it was a gradual change that happened, but looking back, I can kind of see how the challenges in my reaction to them had an impact, either positively or negatively, right? Because I certainly didn't handle everything perfectly when Big Brother came in and started messing with my accounts,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
So that's just an example of, when I look back at, obviously I wasn't the CEO, but I owned a pretty big book of business. And, I had responsibilities to clients, and the clients weren't necessarily getting what they had bought. Because and we had different motivations, right? Because now we were owned by this parent rather than kind of positioning the company to sell, and we were just this little piece of this huge corporation. And so just those, that dynamic changing really kind of threw me off. And
Wow.
and whether I did it right or wrong, because I've always found that in business, and especially in sales, it's a fine line. I have a responsibility to my clients, and I also have a responsibility to the business. And making sure that I maintain my integrity and the company's integrity, and making sure that I fulfill my commitments to both is
Yeah.
very hard.
Yeah.
And so, that's just one of the things that I think about in my own, recent history of, lessons learned, and how I overcame, and how I made mistakes too.
No, that is a good example. I remember in about 2017, 18, we were still very young, and we've always been bootstrapped. We've never had outside investment. It's always been off the sales that has given us lifeblood. There is a potentially biggest deal yet that we had in front of us from Canada, and it was this company from Calgary who had this liquor that they wanted to have supplied in area stores, and they had asked us to they said, how many sales reps do you have? And we're like, we have up to 8. Well, we were like really pushing it. Like we had some contractors we did some work for, but we maybe had 4 people that were like full time. It's like, okay, well, I don't know if you can push this, but what I need uh, you guys to make 10 calls to each store, and each call has to be from a different rep. And we said, okay, well, why is that? Said, well, we'd really like to get this liquor in the store, but they don't really know about us yet. So what we need you to do is call and ask the store clerk if you have XYZ, if they have XYZ liquor in stock. And we're like, okay, but wouldn't you want us to speak to the store manager to set up an appointment, to talk? He's like, no, 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 that's not going to work. What we need is we need to create demand. Yeah.
Hmm.
So you see where this is going? And we're like, okay. So he's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
want each rep to call and ask the store clerk if they have XYZ liquor, so that the store clerk thinks, oh my gosh, we are the only store in town that doesn't have this. Everybody wants it. It's all the rage. So we're going to call and order bulk of this, alcohol for our supply.
Yeah.
And, in essence, they wanted to create a false demand for the product by us calling and asking for this. And we didn't accept it, and we really needed the money at that time. And
Yeah.
we decided, like, this is not a part of our philosophy. We can sell a lot of things, um, but we can't do this. This doesn't fall within our mission, you know.
Yeah.
And I use that story with our internal team and our account managers to help kind of guide them with what the limit, if you're close to working with a customer like this, or excuse me, our account executives, when they're speaking with people about us, this is kind of the limit. Like, we don't, if it feels like something like this is probably not something that we're going to be able to stand by. So, it's not that that comes across every day, but I think what that did was it felt as though we were truly standing by our mission, And we're really trying to help the marketplace, not hurt it, and just repeat
Yeah.
history in a negative way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's one.
Yeah. That's really cool. Because it would have been really easy to just
Oh, he
jump at
was ready to
that,
pay.
right?
He was like, "I got my credit card. You guys ready to go? Like, why are you guys stalling here? Let's go."
Right. And
Yeah.
talk about easy
Oh,
money too. I mean, you're really just calling and saying, "Hey, do
that's
you
it.
have
It
this?"
was it was gonna be
Yeah.
so easy.
Yeah.
So,
Right. But again, easy doesn't necessarily mean
yeah,
right,
yeah,
and best for the
right.
business. Uh, One thing that I know, there are so many companies like ours and yours out there because I think, obviously, lead generation, business development is difficult. And because of that difficulty, churn is something that we have to constantly be
Yeah,
looking at and
yeah.
dealing with. And it's not only, so part of that is, doing a good job up front,
Mhm.
in the sales process to make sure that we're,
Yeah,
qualifying, that we're truly selling to someone that we can be successful with. That can be difficult, right? We can do a lot of discovery, but until we actually get in and start working together, that's when a lot of the learning happens. So we have ways to make sure that we are offering a good solution. And ultimately, we give people, it's a very short-term commitment, right? It's kind of like, let's try
yeah,
this out and then kind of see where we go from there. Um, but how do you guys, because, and the other thing I want to say too, that I think in this business in particular makes churn difficult, and also, this happened in IT as well, is that, we're only as good as our customers, right? So I can get people on the phone with you, but then you have to actually
yeah.
do a good job and
That
close the
is a
deal,
major
right?
thing. Yeah,
And so often, and as we know, Ryan, in sales, it's kind of the 80-20 rule, right? I mean, there are a lot of just kind of average salespeople out there, and so long story short is there's a lot of different variables to being successful. So how do you guys deal with churn? And would love to know what you've learned about and how you've been able to fine tune, your ability to, keep clients
yeah,
happy and be successful in that
yeah.
way.
It's a probably a question that most lead gen companies ask, I imagine, because
Yeah.
we might work with certain type of clientele, but at the end of the day, you know, whether you're setting leads through cold calling or email or contact marketing or some other out, outbound method, there is a expectation that usually is pretty hard to define because you don't always know in the X factor their ability to first of all understand outbound, and second of all have the skill set to be able to close the
Yeah.
deals that you are setting up for them. One of the
Yeah.
things that I think there was a defining moment in defining our account management strategy. So our account managers are those folks on our team who manage and work with the clients once they're on board and act as a liaison between their company and ours. And they're really strategic advisors, outsourced sales managers. They have a lot on their plate and have a burden to carry. And one of the things that early on was a defining moment was learning that for us results are certainly part of the conversation as to why customers leave or stay, but actually there's something that's more important than that and more priority than that, which is an overarching umbrella of a positive customer experience. And that's what I think is more important or more priority, I guess depending on the situation, because time and time again, we see very success, and I've seen Miles post about this. I've seen very successful clients leave us just, out of thin air. When I say successful, I mean
Hmm.
they're having great results. We're doing our job.
Yeah.
We're following process. They're having meetings, and one day they're gone. So what I don't want is when someone has great results and they say, listen, we're having great results, but our experience isn't been that great. Or I really don't like this part of your process. That's when I realize that that hits me harder than someone who had great results, but had a good experience and is leaving, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of been our mantra is a positive client experience. And what's underneath that umbrella? Results, process, user experience, quickness to respond, proactivity. All of those things cover why someone stays. The opposite end of that is
Hmm.
we have some of our least performing clients in terms of what you would consider top standards and conversion stay the longest. So we've had people that just believe in it and they have to have outbound activity and they have minimal number of appointments and leads, but they want to continually refine the process because they wouldn't have outbound activity if it wasn't for us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I love, that's the thing I love about working at Veth Group is, there are so many organizations that just
yeah,
can't do this
yeah,
for a variety of reasons, right? And not that they can't, it's not that
right,
we're doing anything magical. So maybe can't is the wrong word. It's more so, I think about it as, organizations can build this
right,
capability or they can buy it. And a number of them, are just, we really appeal to smaller companies that are, looking to grow, need to
yeah,
grow. And, what's interesting to me is that just like you said, my definition of success, as far as a number of leads or quality of leads, can be very
yeah,
different than someone else's, right? So we have clients that are getting, a
oh yeah,
lot more appointments than others,
right,
but they're both just as happy. 'Cause a lot of it comes down to just how many, not only how many do you need and price point and all that kind of thing, but also your
yeah,
success in closing them, right? Um, so I love that because that's really, we see a very similar thing
yeah.
as you're seeing. And it really all does come down to customer experience. How much time do you spend dealing
Oh,
with
it's
that
constant.
aspect of the business?
It's constant.
Yeah.
One of the teams I spend a significant amount of time with weekly is our project management and IT team because they are the ones that are essentially creating our service into a how could I say it? Like we're trying to almost make outsource selling a SaaS product in some aspects. Now, not really. We don't have a software at this point,
Mm.
but we try to automate a lot of things internally, but also for our clients. So it's something where I spend a lot of time innovating with that team weekly. We have, and they have internal brainstorm and innovation sessions that they have, and proactive kind of system advancement goals that they're trying to reach, so that we're consistently trying to meet our clients where they need to be in order to be the happiest or satisfied possible. Some examples of that would be,
Yeah.
automated emails. As soon as a lead is generated, they receive an email notification to all the parties that they've listed with the SDR who generated that lead with a description of what happened on that call, the date and time, and then also a survey button. Once the time has completed, they can press a button. Did this happen? Did it not happen? Does it need to be reset? Which then goes back into our system for our special ops team to go and follow up on, you know. So there's an example of something that we've gotten feedback from
Yeah.
our clients on to help us automate the way that and provide a better experience for our clients when interacting with the leads that we generate, the work we do for them. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really cool because timing obviously is everything in sales, as well as that feedback loop, right? Of using the information and capturing that
sure.
information. I think is really difficult,
Oh yeah,
especially in a very
yeah.
fast-paced
It really is
environment.
because I mean we have about I think about 3,500 calls made a day. And usually around
Hmm.
100 to 150 appointments a week and another 100 or 150 leads on top of that, nurture and warm leads, people who aren't ready for an appointment. But, that, um, it just depends, right, on the seasons and flow, but that's kind of what we're pacing right now. And so we have to make sure that all of those are being dispersed in the right way, they're being reported on. And so it's been a long process to get there, but that's kind of we've seen way less, complaints about our experience in the last year because of the time we invest with our internal team to continually problem solve, and you don't see that. You don't see that from the outside.
Yeah.
You only see the leads come, right? And we're not even talking about the 35 SDRs we have that make calls. I guess that's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool too that your business, we used to say, every
Yeah.
business is an IT
Yeah, it's
business.
starting to feel that way.
Well,
Yeah.
in this day and age, yeah, I mean, you have to utilize and not only buy the right
Yeah.
technology, but how you use it is so important, right? And really, I love the fact that you think about yourself as an innovator, right? That you're not just consuming it, but you're figuring out better ways to use it. And that is a real differentiator that um, not all companies, especially not all CEOs, think of it that way. So that's
Thank you.
that's good on you for sure.
Yeah.
So before we
Oh,
go,
yeah.
let's talk about the soccer club that you founded. Love to hear about that. Also, I think it's really hard to be in a position like you're in and do something like that, still have time or make time for something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more
Thank you
about
for
it.
asking. Actually, uh, soccer is my first passion. Soccer is my first passion. I always loved it. I know Miles played college baseball. Um, I have always
Yep.
just enjoyed it. I've never been like the most amazing player, and so, but like, it just doesn't stop me. It's tried to stop me, but I just keep going. And it's something that I realized when when you do one thing for so long, you eventually find different reasons for doing it. When you're like 10 years old, you're like, oh, I want to be a professional this, right? I want to be a movie star. I want to be a rock star or whatever. And that was mine. I was like, I want to be a professional soccer player, you know. And then when you get to a little bit older, you're more realistic. Oh, I want to play college, And then afterwards, you're like, why am I doing this? It's too much running. but but then I think that there's certain reasons you do things, and when you love something so much, you can find those other reasons for doing it because it can be dangerous too. You can become obsessed with something, and if you're not getting the desired result, it
Yeah.
can actually be devastating and damaging. And that's not just for sports, but it could be for work.
Yeah.
It could be for uh, any topic that is a hobby. And so the reason I started the club was when I'd taken a break from soccer soon after. I'd played college a little bit. I had played in a semi-pro league, and I took a break from it when I started Superhuman. But I got obsessed with Superhuman and H2H, and I started to. This is even before the pandemic. Not to mention all the stuff that goes down during that. But I had started to put so much effort into it and was
Yeah.
kind of neglecting my health a little bit, physical health, that I started to have some heart issues and blood pressure issues. So I decided like I really need to commit to physical activity. So I said, why don't I start playing again? And that has been a incredible stress reliever and has balanced my psyche like crazy and brought me to a really nice mental and
Mhm.
physical health state. So I said, this is the reason I'm doing this is for physical
Yeah.
health and because I love it. And I think I can give, you know, to the sport, and that comes with the club. So uh, that has immensely helped me. I've been able to stay in shape, and college guys that you play with are your nice barometer for what the standard should be when you're getting older. So that was kind of partly too is like, hey,
Right.
as I get older, I could go from running 3 miles to 2 miles to 1 mile to stay in shape, you know, and I'm not really keeping up with the standard,
Yeah.
or I could challenge myself. And that's kind of the reason for getting back into it. But the reason for the club is to, I want to stay healthy, but also giving back to the sport. I think, I've always loved playing and I've always taken
Yeah.
from it, meaning whatever's available for me to do, I've done. And, this is an opportunity for me to provide other guys who are younger and developing an opportunity to develop themselves. And I find a lot of satisfaction in that. I
Yeah.
separate it from the business, so my mind's it's almost meditative when I'm doing that. So when I come back to Superhuman, I'm refreshed and ready to go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the power of that, the
yeah.
physical and the
Oh, yeah.
mental being combined. I find if I exercise, and then also, so it's
100%.
exercise, sleep, diet. If I'm doing those things together, the impact on my mental acuity and
Yeah,
just my
it's
energy
it's
is
it's life
incredible.
changing. I feel more like a lot more vitality and ability to just produce, um, you know, into my 30s. And
Yeah.
I always tell people 30s are underrated if believe in that. And if you allow yourself to really
Yeah.
sharpen your being, it can be a very good years. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I
here we
can tell you
go.
from
I'm ready.
experience, the 40s can be the same way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
They're the best years of my
Can't
life
wait
so
then.
far, so it just keeps
That's
getting
great.
better. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So, what are you reading right now, or what has been the most impactful book on your professional or personal life?
Wow. So I think it all starts personal and spiritual, and then, everything manifests around that. Uh,
Yeah.
I guess the most impactful book in terms of kind of inspiration was probably The Alchemist. That might be a little trite, but I read it in a time.
Mhm.
It's a good book. It's a good book. I read it when I
No,
was
it's
about
cool.
24 and
I
really trying to
agree.
figure out who I
Yeah.
was as a professional. You got that post-college depression where you're like, what's my purpose? And it really helped me tap into some of like my
Yes.
strong desires or likes and dislikes, and realize, hey, you can do what you want. You don't have to be stuck doing things that you don't want to do. Do what you need to do when you need to do them so you can do the things you want to do when you want to do them. That idea. And that book really set me on a trajectory of, okay, I can kind of follow my passions within practical reality, you know. And so that was pretty foundational, but I would say the most impactful practical like a book that stays with me day to day is The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and The Eighth Habit, because that sets up a
Mhm.
true structure
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
human and your day-to-day experience that allows you to make daily, weekly, monthly um, checks and activities that truly show you results in your development as a person. And it's not just professional, on the personal side too. Um, so I would say those two are probably most impactful right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, really good. I mean, a
Yeah,
mentor of mine
that's
bought me The
yeah, that's when you want to
Alchemist,
read that.
in my 20s as well. I'm going through the same thing. So, yeah, it worked out perfectly, and then obviously Covey, was, foundational for me as well, which again, I
Wow,
think I read that, in my late 20s, as well. In fact, I think the company I worked for might
that's a
have
good
bought us
idea.
all a copy, as I
Yeah,
recall. So, yeah. All right, so how can
sure.
people
Thank you.
find you? I mean, I know you're a great follow on LinkedIn, so I encourage everybody to follow you there. In fact, you had a video recently which I really liked, where you talked about 750 companies that you've
Here you
worked
go.
with, 4,000 campaigns, and 2 million dials. Um, and what I like about the content that you post is that you're not promoting as much as you're talking about what you've learned, what you guys are doing, what's working. And I think that's what's really powerful. And that's what I like
Mm.
to. Those are the people that I like to follow on LinkedIn.
Oh, well, thank
That
you.
are
Yeah,
really
I wish I could
enriching the
post on LinkedIn
experience.
more. Uh, I'm always trying to get to it. It's just I
Yeah.
have to focus on the priorities, which are our team. And sometimes it allows me to post, and sometimes, the most value comes from, just working on process and preparing. So I think I work
Yeah.
to post on there as much as I can, so you can follow us there. Also, we have a content manager full time who we're working with on videos and long form content that we really work hard to provide relevant and educational topics. So you can follow our blog at superhumanprospecting.com and our YouTube page as well. So yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
awesome. Good. Yeah, I'll check that out. I wasn't aware of that. Great. All right, Ryan Pereus, Superhuman Prospecting. Thank you so much for taking the
Yep.
time. Really enjoyed this. Let's absolutely stay in touch, and can't wait to watch you continue on your trajectory higher as an entrepreneur and CEO.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode of Business Black Belts. Should you want to see more content on both the show, marketing, and business in general, feel free to check out my LinkedIn. Thanks.